This episode of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast is brought to you by Legacy Staffs, which are crafted by the Brazos Walking Stick Company in Waco, Texas. You can go to brazosticks.com and use the name Mac Payne, one word, at the checkout and get 10% off your next order of the Legacy Staff or cane of your own design.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Vietnam Veterans News Podcast. News of interest about Vietnam veterans from a Vietnam veteran. Now here's your host, Mac Payne.
This is Mac Payne here with episode 1824 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. News about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. I'm calling this episode the Doubleheader Story of Marine Valor. It's a doubleheader because first it involves a brave Marine who sacrificed his own body by throwing himself on a grenade to protect his fellow Marines. His name was Private First Class Bruce W. Carter. When he died, he was serving with Hotel Company 2nd Battalion 3rd Marines in Quang Province up north. He was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions that day. That in itself is a great story. What makes this story a doubleheader is what his mother, Georgia Carter Creel, is doing to honor the memory of her son. It is an amazing thing what lengths some parents will do to honor their fallen children. They wrote a story in the Miami Herald about what Georgia Carter Creel is doing to honor her son. It is so amazing, I decided to share that story with you on this podcast because it will shore up what I always say about the Vietnam veterans. The Vietnam veteran generation is as great as any that ever heeded the call of duty from its country. The actions of Bruce Carter in Vietnam typified that greatness of the generation. The title of the story I'm going to share with you from the Miami Herald, I read it for many years when I lived in Naples, Florida. It was a great paper. In my opinion, second only to the Naples Daily News. Enough about that. Title of the story I'm going to share with you is, He was 19 and threw himself over a grenade in Vietnam. He now will be buried at Arlington. This story was provided by none other than Theo Karantsalis. Theo tells us not only about Bruce Carter, but also about what his mother is doing. I'll guarantee you, you are going to be impressed. Let's take a look at the story. Dateline, Miami, Florida. The body of a local hero who dove on a grenade in Vietnam to save his friends will be reinterred in November at Arlington National Cemetery. Marine Pvt. First Class Bruce W. Carter, 19, a radio operator, died on August the 7th, 1969, while serving in the Vietnam War. He was laid to rest at Vista Memorial Gardens near Miami Lakes. 50 years later, Carter's mother felt her heroic son should be laid to rest at the 624-acre Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia, a U.S. military cemetery whose earliest remains date to the Civil War. If you're not familiar with how the Arlington Cemetery came about, it all started in 1861, when Robert E. Lee made the decision to resign his commission with the U.S. Army and go and serve his state during the Civil War. Naturally, the Union was not happy about one of their top generals going to the other side. So they said, let's take over his 1,100-acre Arlington estate and hold it as retribution for him running out on the Union. Later, during the war, when the Union had so many casualties, they needed a place to bury them. So someone came up with the bright idea of, let's bury them on Robert E. Lee's Arlington estate. That'll make it harder for him to reclaim it after the war. they started interring more and more Union dead on Lee's Arlington estate. It wasn't long before somebody came up with the idea of making it into a national cemetery because it's right across the river from Washington. Great location. It's got this big, wonderful house built on it we can use for the headquarters, and Robert E. Lee will never be able to get his land back if we do that. That's the story of the origins of the Arlington National Cemetery. Every time I hear about the Arlington National Cemetery, I think about that. There's a lot involved with it, but I still hate it when somebody's land is confiscated and taken away from them. It's almost like communism. Back to Theo's story. "We are taking Bruce home to be with his friends," said Georgia Carter Krell, 89, of Virginia Gardens, a small community near the Miami International Airport. Carter's friends include hotel company 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines who fought alongside him in Vietnam's Quang province. In 1971, President Richard Nixon posthumously awarded Carter the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest medal for valor in combat. "Carter gallantly gave his life in the service of his country," Nixon said. Fully aware of the probable consequences of his action, but determined to protect the men following him, he unhesitatingly threw himself over the grenade, absorbing the full effects of the detonation with his body, Nixon said at the White House ceremony. 2 other Marines from this battalion, Staff Sergeant Peter S. Connor and Private First Class James Anderson, Jr., also received posthumous Medals of Honor. Now here's where we talk about what Carter's mother did, and I find it highly commendable. Let's take a look at what Carter's mother did to honor the memory of her son. Continuing with the story, Carter Krell has fought to preserve the memory of her son and other fallen soldiers. She has served as the national president of American Gold Star Mothers and has been the keynote speaker at Veterans Day and Memorial Day celebrations. In 2008, she persuaded officials to rename one of Miami's busiest hospitals, the Miami Veterans Center, to the Bruce W. Carter Department of Veterans Affairs Medical Center, located at 1201 Northwest 16th Street in Miami. Carter Krell then lobbied leaders in her hometown of Virginia Gardens, population 2,380, to rename a busy thoroughfare in her son's honor and install a memorial plaque in front of the village hall. Carter Krell peeled back layers of military bureaucracy to have her son interred at Arlington. It was very complicated and had to be approved by the Secretary of the Navy, said Carter Krell. U.S. Navy Secretary Kenneth J. Brathwaite did not return an email seeking comment. When hit with an estimated $10,000 moving tab, Carter Krell said friends, including many Marines, quickly donated to the cause. The right place for her son to be is up in Arlington with the rest of our national heroes, said Virginia Gardens Mayor Spencer Dino IV. Many organizations helped with the cost of the transfer, and I'm glad the village was able to assist her as well. The next step will be the actual move, which Carter Krell estimates will take place on Wednesday, November the 4th, the day after the election. A spokesman for the Arlington National Cemetery told the Herald that burial dates are in flux due to COVID-19 and advised the public to monitor updates on its website, arlingtoncemetery.mil/funerals. By the way, that link will be on the show notes for this podcast, episode number 1824, over at the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com. Until then, Carter Krell has a message for a nation battling the COVID-19 pandemic. Put your head down and keep going. Don't quit, said Carter Krell. Semper Fi. That is some of the best advice I've heard in a long time. Coming from the mother of a Vietnam veteran Marine hero who gave his life for his country. This woman is doing some good things, and I can see why her son, Bruce W. Carter, did something tremendous for his fellow Marines. I take this opportunity to issue Georgia Carter Crail an official Vietnam Veteran News Podcast salute for your actions that honor the memory of your son. Speaking on behalf of all Vietnam veterans, I say thank you for what you're doing to help honor the memory of a brave Vietnam veteran. We wish you the best. This is Mac Payne closing out episode 1824 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You are cordially invited to return again soon and often to listen to more of these stories that will be coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News.
How about that? Ain't that a mess?